Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to another NFL team preview video for the 2020 season. Today we continue on with the NFC North, and we're going to be talking about the Green Bay Packers today. And you're probably wondering, how is a Vikings fan going to cover the Green Bay Packers impartially? And I hope to be able to prove that to you today. I'm actually a little bit of a closet Aaron Rodgers fan, if you will. He's just done phenomenal stuff in this league ever since he got here, and watching him is just like, it's just the cherry on top. I guess my advice to people, like in this situation, if you can be a fan of the sport first and then a fan of your team second, everything else just falls in line, and you get all these bonus points for being able to enjoy every aspect of the sport and the league and what have you. It just makes for a more enjoyable experience. Instead of covering or following your primary team, you can follow almost the entire league and have a really good time. So that aside, I sort of have to explain myself, I guess. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 2019 recap for the Green Bay Packers. They went 13-3 overall, one game away from the Super Bowl. Offense ranked 18th in the league. They were 17th in passing, 15th in rushing. Defense was also ranked 18th in the league. They were 14th against the pass, 23 against the run. Matt LaFleur is your head coach for the second straight year, and after a inaugural campaign, if you will, of 13-3. Snapshot, of course, of the previous 4 years. In 2018, they were 6-9-1. 2017 they were 7-9, 2016 they were 10-6, and in 2015 they were also 10-6. So it looks like a little bit of a return to dominance of this division that the Packers had. They were 6-0 last year against divisional opponents, swept everybody that they came across, and I believe also 7-1 at home. So we're seeing the emergence of the Packers returning to a very dangerous playoff contender, and that is probably debatable from what I've heard, because you could argue that a lot of things went right last year for Green Bay, and those things tend to not happen continuously. It's a classical error where you assume this thing is happening, so it's going to continue to happen on into the future, and that remains to be seen. But if you're a Packers fan, I think you do got to be a little bit excited about what this team looks like on paper, and we're going to go over that right now with the projected depth chart. And I'm going to start with defense, because the secondary is mostly intact from last year. Actually, it's completely intact. I don't know why I said mostly. So you've got, of course, Darnell Savage at safety, Amos at safety. Darnell Savage was a pick that I really, really liked 2 years ago coming out in the first round. He's just an absolute thumper coming out of Maryland. And, of course, you have on the corners, you have Kevin King, Jari Alexander, and then, of course, you could always flip in Jackson. And then not sure who's going to play the slot, but I assume it would probably be Jackson in this situation. Correct me if I'm wrong. With the linebacker position, talk about winning the free agency lottery last year with Preston and Zadarius Smith, who combined for over 20 sacks. That will make any team happy and any team's fans happy, if you will. Middle linebacker position, a little bit more shaky after Blake Martinez leaves, and honestly, I don't blame you. I wasn't the biggest fan of Blake Martinez. I think in this situation, I would be happy with him off my roster, if you will. Of course, you bring in Christian Kirksey from Cleveland, who is an established veteran who should help with that run defense after it was ranked 23rd in the league overall last year. On the defensive line, of course, you have Clark, who got the huge free agent extension the other day, and then on the two sides of him, you have Lowry and Lancaster. So in my opinion, pretty decent defensive unit coached by Mike Pettin. It's just a question of whether or not everybody that is back this year can improve on those previous ranks, being 23rd against the run and 14th against the pass. So you didn't bring in a lot of new pieces, if you will, other than Kirksey. So how do you make that, how do you continue to improve this? For the offense, now here we have a few question marks, because I believe Packers fans were a little upset that they didn't use their draft capital to get weapons or, like a playmaker for Aaron Rodgers, if you will. Now, of course, they did sign Devin Funchess in free agency, but he is, of course, opted out for the 2020 season. He is no longer available. So we can't really talk much about him being included in this. So for the offensive line, we'll start with Bakhtiari. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. At left tackle, Jenkins at left guard. Jenkins was one of my other favorite players coming out of the draft a few years ago. Just an absolute steal where they got him. Lindsley, Turner, and Wagner are the rest of your offensive linemen. Of course, Brian Bulaga is no longer here. He is now with the Chargers. Aaron Rodgers is, of course, your quarterback still, for the time being, I guess. For the tight end position, we also have Mercedes Lewis on the roster. I penciled in Sternberger just because I want to, I want some variety. I want to see him play. For your wide receivers, you have Adam Lazard, who I enjoyed watching last year. I think he could be something special in this league. MVS, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, and then of course one of the better wide receivers in the league is Devontae Adams. So the passing game, I think, is going to be not an afterthought, but it's going to not be the primary focus going forward with Matt LaFleur, given what this offseason was and what he wants to do. And I think what he wants to do is be a carbon copy of the 49ers that beat him twice last year. So I believe that's why he's moving more into this direction of a running game, and why they took A.J. Dillon in the second round this previous draft. Of course, we also have Aaron Jones will be the primary focus of this. He was free last year. Free Aaron Jones with over 1,000 yards and 16 touchdowns in the 2019 campaign. So the running game is pretty good. They were 15th in rushing last year, and there is room to improve. And then, of course, I think one of the key differences is that they didn't have that 49er style fullback, Kyle, whatever his name is. I can't pronounce it at this moment because I don't remember how to. I've done it once and I didn't rehearse it, so it is what it is. But you know who I'm talking about. And maybe that changes this year with Josiah Dwarf, who they drafted out of Cincinnati. Now, of course, he is a tight end, but I think that's what they're going to do with him, is move him to the fullback position. So that is your depth chart preview for the 2020 NFL season. Let's move on to the schedule. First, we open up on the road against the Vikings. We have the Lions at home, Saints on the road, Falcons at home, Bucks and Texans on the road, Vikings at home, and 49ers on the road to round out the first half. The bye week is, of course, in week 5. Not gonna lie, this is a pretty daunting first half of a schedule if I've ever seen one. You've got a lot of competitive playoff teams: the Saints, the Bucks, the Texans, the Vikings, the 49ers. Really, the Lions are your only R&R game so far. So the second half is where they have to really make headway if they don't have a very strong first half. Now remember, as I said, a lot of things could have just went right for this team last year. Maybe it doesn't go as well as it could this year, especially as they transition to a different, well, not transition completely because they've already sort of done that, but as they get into the second year of this offensive system. For the second half of the schedule, we have the Jaguars at home, the Colts on the road, the Bears and Eagles at home, Lions on the road, Panthers and Titans at home, and then we round out the season with the Bears on the road. It's kind of actually depressing from a Vikings fan, where our last game against the Packers is week 8, and we don't get to sort of end the season competing for the division title, if you will. Those sort of end of the season games where the title's on the line in Green Bay and at Lambeau Field are always just fantastic, and I'm going to miss not having it this year. So that is a look at the 2020 schedule. As I said, I think the front half is very loaded, very dangerous. They're going to have to come out swinging heavy, hard, and often to really get a leg up in this and get back to the playoffs, and especially if they want to, continue the 13-3 dominance that they had a year ago. So 3 big storylines as we head into the season. Actually, 2 big storylines. We're changing the formula up a little bit here with 3 divisions to go. I don't know if that's wise, but I'm doing it anyway. So number 1 big story is, of course, Rodgers and LaFleur, their relationship. Do we have a schism brewing? According to early reports of training camp, Aaron Rodgers seems to be a pretty happy guy. He's saying all the right things. That could just be the leadership in him that he's established throughout his career in the NFL. But for right now, I mean, of course, we could, point to circumstances and evidence that, precedes this. For example, a good scenario would be Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, who said Josh Rosen is the guy, and then he goes out, drafts Kyler Murray, and ships Josh Rosen out of town. So things can change at a moment's notice, but right now everybody seems to be happy, and everybody's saying the right things. Storyline number 2, Rashawn Gary. Where does he fit into this defense? I don't know exactly, and when they drafted him back in 2019, I didn't know where he fit into this defense really at all. We did a podcast episode. You can go to, of course, facebook.com/VOR Sports to catch those. When he was drafted, we had to sort of pick who our favorite and least favorite draft picks were. Rashawn Gary was my least favorite draft pick. I think he could be, potentially the first bust of that first round, if you will, because when I watched the tape that he had against Notre Dame and a few other schools, I just wasn't impressed, and I didn't see what everybody else saw. Maybe I'm wrong, but from what I can tell, not exactly the greatest breakout rookie season for somebody who was drafted in his spot. So, Packers fans, how do you feel about Rashawn Gary? How do you feel about your previous 2 drafts as it is? Because some people outside of Green Bay seem to think that it's very suspicious as to what they're doing, and just the fact that they're using draft picks where they are as opposed to where they could be to help Aaron Rodgers. So let me know what your feelings are on Rashawn Gary. And speaking of the draft, The new feature, which you can't see because I'm sitting in front of, there's only so much camera space, is my favorite draft pick from this previous draft for this team. That is Josiah Dwarf, the tight end from Cincinnati. Of course, I've already mentioned him at length. They're going to be moving him to the fullback position, so I'm really excited to see how he transitions to that. And just overall, good kid. I'm just excited to see a Cincinnati player get to the big time in Lambeau Field. So that is your 2020 NFL preview for the Green Bay Packers. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.